Okay, so we do have another portfolio we can look at. He sent me a Vimeo. I went and found his ArtStation as well. I would rather look at the ArtStation, but his ArtStation is missing a lot of the things from this thing. So I guess we'll do some bouncing back and forth between them. Here we go, more bikes. Yeah, exactly. I swear I'm probably responsible for flooding the market with motorbikes. Right off the bat, I would really make sure you don't have your asset go out of frame like this. I think the model itself is good, but yeah, as far as like presentation goes, make sure your asset doesn't come out of the frame like that. That's a pretty big important thing. The model itself, it looks really good though. But yeah, I know this is like a small thing, but it just doesn't really look professional if your asset comes out of the frame. There's something awkward about this sort of like framing, if that makes sense, especially having so much height above the bike and then having it come out the bottom. I would definitely refrain from this. The model itself, I think, is really good though. I'm not really sure about having all these stills afterwards. It's not that bad, I guess. But yeah, there's just something a bit awkward about some of the framing of these images. Like this is a nice framing. The color chart, yeah, like usual, the Macbeth chart. I've mentioned the Macbeth chart many times before though. Everyone, for some reason, a lot of people have been doing the turntables like stepping. I would rather people just let the full frame range run. Like there's no reason to have like the stepping for this sort of thing. You might as well just render the full turntable. It just kind of, yeah. It just feels much nicer, much more professional just having a full frame range. The only time we usually do the stepping sort of thing at work is if maybe they just want to test the HDRI or something and they don't want to invest the render farm for a test. But obviously you don't have these sorts of limitations at home, right? You might as well just have like a full, proper, clean, nice turntable. It would be nice, because the problem is this feels very perfect in CG. It would be nice if some of the verts were just knocked around a little bit. It doesn't matter as much from like these sorts of angles, but as soon as you get real close up, I would rather see very subtle imperfections across the model. Like that I think will make the model look way better. So I think his topology is all good. Like I don't really have any comments on the topology, but I also kind of feel like at this point, having just a Maya screenshot isn't nice. You might as well just render your scene, but with the wireframe shader on top. Once again, be careful about cutting into your image. You don't really want to cut into your model like this, but I would definitely have a nice render of the wireframe instead of just Maya screenshots. I mean, it's good seeing that the model is all nice and clean. Most of my points are mostly about presentation. I like this presentation, but once again, just don't have the stepping. Might as well just render the full frame range, right? Once again, the model itself is quite nice. So he's got this. This is a bit weird to me. Actually, so I like that he's actually rendered the wireframe again. I think this actually is, I would rather see the wireframe like this instead of this. This presentation looks better than this one. But the blue is pretty intense. I'm not a fan of this sort of image. I don't really see what a point of this is. I would rather just see like a turntable of the gray, turntable of the wireframe, and then turntable of the UV checker. I don't think there's really a point of ever combining all three of them into one image. I don't really see a point of doing this. Once again, the slow turntable, it just doesn't look nice. In the time frame we've had to look at all of this, you could have just had 3 nice turntables, and I think it would have looked way better. But once again, the model itself is not bad. It's a nice portfolio choice, having like my only kind of issue with this is it actually is very similar to the bike. It's the same sort of idea. You got your nicer, more elegant forms at the top. You got the tire and then the mechanical stuff here. This is technically the same thing. You've got your more complex mechanical parts here. You've got your interesting tires and stuff like that, and then you've got your body at the top. This essentially is the same as just doing the bike. Other than bikes, what would be a good real life project to model? I mean, there's plenty of amazing things like that. Just go to a museum and just have a look. I think that the main thing to consider for a good portfolio piece from the real world is just look at, like, does it have a variety of forms and materials? Is it like a good blend of like elegant forms, mechanical parts, and then maybe, you know, obviously like tires and stuff like that. Like modeling a tire tread is a unique modeling exercise that you can do. Anything that kind of blends all three of these sorts of areas, I think, is a good portfolio piece. You don't have to do a bike. A bike is just the easy one to point to, I guess. He also has like this section. For me, it kind of feels like a step down, but it's because it's like game assets, it's not film. So as a game, I think this works. I would probably just separate these two. I would probably put the game into its own thing and separate it from the film work. Like, I won't comment too much on the game section just because it's not what I do, but he has some other nice stuff. He made this watch, and I actually think the watch is very cool, actually. Like, this is really nice to me. Usually I would think a watch wouldn't necessarily be a good portfolio piece, but I think if you can model it to this sort of level for this sort of close up and show like the mechanisms and stuff, I think this actually could be a really cool portfolio piece. So I'm actually quite happy with this one. Like, it's really cool to see this, like the model is all clean and stuff like that. But once again, I would be careful with the framing. Either have it so close that it's clear you're showing a close up, or have it slightly out that the model isn't cut off by the bottom. But yeah, so I actually quite like the watch. I think the watch is very cool. This is a really nice render, actually. I quite like this one. This is really cool. I'm not sure if I would include this sort of stuff. It's actually not too bad though. It's kind of nice to see. I don't know if this would be portfolio worthy. I think his presentation is actually pretty good though. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because he has a really nice presentation with this thing, but then doesn't have the nice presentation for this thing, which is kind of confusing. I feel like if you can make this look this good, I wouldn't see a reason of why you wouldn't make your bike look like that as well. I think one of the benefits of doing like a bike, for example, is you don't really have to do too much texturing. You can just make really nice shaders and essentially kind of get this sort of look without having to do too much texturing, right? Which is kind of one reason why I always mention the bike, right? I think what would make his bike look way better is doing obviously the very subtle breakup like I mentioned, and then just making the shaders look cool like this. So if I was him, I feel he's already kind of checked the boxes for modeling from the real world. He doesn't need to do this anymore. He's already got his cool bike. He's got the tractor, stuff like that. I would honestly texture this stuff because I feel like modeling now is not, having a modeling portfolio is not the best anymore. I would probably learn texturing and probably texture these two assets. And then if you was to have another portfolio piece, I would build something from concept. Because he's already nailed the modeling one-to-one. I think the concept problem solving is the one thing his portfolio is kind of missing. The game stuff I would probably take out and put somewhere else. Like, he doesn't have to get rid of it. I would just put it somewhere else and not include it in the same portfolio. I think the watch is cool. I would keep the watch. The bottles I'm not sure about. I probably wouldn't keep the bottles. I think you could probably get a job with just the bike, the tractor, you know, texture those things up quite nice. Keep his watch. And then include like a concept from, you know, a sci-fi thing. And I think that alone should be enough for a pretty strong portfolio, I think. Yeah, I think the main thing is just the presentation needs to be enhanced a bit. I don't like seeing the Maya viewport. I would rather see a rendered wireframe. His ArtStation just has the tractor and the game thing. I would rather put everything on ArtStation just because I personally like seeing things like this. This is my personal preference. Oh, okay, cool. This is cool. All right, he's organized the asset. Awesome. I think this is probably why I also prefer seeing ArtStation, is because I can actually see this. Awesome. I already appreciate the work so much more now. He's got his UVs laid out, center, left, right, very organized. Awesome. Yeah, show this with everything, right? He's got his nice grouping. So yeah, already this shows this person could work in production. They have production thinking, right? Yeah, this is why I'd rather just honestly see the ArtStation. Show everything like this. Once again, don't do the stepping turntable. Show how a nice clean turntable with all the frame range renders out. Yeah, these sorts of things I'm not a fan of. Having the three like this, I don't think it really does anything. Just have three separate turntables, wireframe, the gray one, and the UV checker, and I think that's enough. And then you can have your close-ups if you want. Actually, this might be a nice one to actually see a close-up of what's going on in here, actually. That could be cool. But yeah, if you texture this thing, I think, texture this. What I would do, I would probably have the bike quite clean, and then you can texture the tractor like as if it's been quite heavily used. If you go in and dent up this, make it not so perfect, and then texture this as if it's got a lot of wear and tear, I think that would be a nice contrast, because at the moment the bike and the tractor are kind of essentially the same sort of asset. But if the bike is quite clean and looked after, and then the tractor becomes quite dented and textured in as if it's been going through a lot of use, I think that will, create a difference between the two assets instead of just being a copy of each other, essentially. But yeah, overall it's really good. Yeah, all the hierarchy is all good. UVs were good. I want to see this sort of stuff with all the assets. But yeah, overall I think it would be good if he brought all of this stuff from his demo reel, bring it over to his ArtStation, and then bring it here. I would probably put the game project into its own separate thing. So you could have instead of portfolio, you have your film and then you have game. Put all your film stuff together into one and then put the game into its own separate category. If you have the tractor, the bike, the watch project here, and then you have a new sci-fi asset based on concept, I think that would be a pretty strong portfolio. And then go through, damage this and texture this. I think your portfolio will be quite balanced as far as like a hard surface portfolio goes. But yeah, very, very cool stuff.